All right. Brennan Caverhill here from the Science Teachers Association of Ontario. We're about to start live streaming our conference talks for the STAO 2017 conference. We're starting with Bonnie Schmidt, and she's just about to be introduced.
All right, I welcome you to hear Bonnie Schmidt, the Executive Director of Let's Talk Science. And it's a great privilege for me to introduce her. My name is Jocelyn Potts. I'm the president of STAO this year. And I'm so grateful that you have chosen to come to the STAO conference this year. And I hope that you have a wonderful day. And what an awesome way to start your day, to come here to hear Bonnie Schmidt. I've gotten to know Bonnie a little bit, and it's been marvelous. And so I feel very honored that I have the privilege of introducing Bonnie. As I said, she is the president and executive director, but she also is the founder of Let's Talk Science. During its 20-plus year history, well over 4 million youth and educators have been reached, and an estimated 26,000 volunteers have been engaged with Let's Talk Science, supporting education, transformation, and developing creative, critical thinkers. The organization has a bold plan to impact 5 million more youth by 2020. I've been at some events that Let's Talk Science has planned. It's always so beautifully top-notch, organized and well done. And so it's great for us at STAO to have Bonnie come, and I'm glad that you're here. Bonnie also let me know that Let's Talk Science has a very strong presence here at STAO with workshops that you can take in. So we're happy about that as well. So we welcome Bonnie to bring to us her perspectives and her passion for science innovation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jocelyn. I think we have some competition next door, right? So maybe louder. Jocelyn, thanks. I'm really honored to be here today. I want to talk about an initiative called Canada 2067. But before we get started, just by a show of hands, how many of you have been teaching science for 5 years or less? 5 to 10 years? My hands are way up, be proud. You're 10, 15 years. And 15 years or more. Okay. So I've got a good diversity. Did I miss any of the numbers? There's some hands I didn't see go up. How many of you have actually seen the narrative change in your career around why what you do is so important? First of all, I want to say thank you for what you have been doing for your career. Being a science teacher is incredibly important, and I would argue becoming increasingly important for Canada's future. But I started Let's Talk Science 25 years ago or a bit more, and I've seen the narrative change numerous times. But I've never quite seen it like it is right now. STEM education, science, technology, engineering, math is really on the public agenda. It's on the federal agenda. It's on the provincial and territorial jurisdictional agenda right across the country. So this slide just talks about the kinds of arguments I see it here being made for STEM education and STEM engagement right across the country. It's complicated, isn't it? It's confusing, it's complicated. Why is it important for our country as we move forward? For me, the thing that gets me up every morning and working with Let's Talk Science on a vision level is how do we create our citizens? What do we need in the next generation so that they can benefit from the opportunity that the evolving world of work is presenting? And how do we build ethical, smart, critical thinking citizens for a new world? We know that science, technology, and innovation is shaping all of our daily lives. And as you see from the icon, we continue to have fewer than half of our kids graduating grade 12 from the senior level sciences. This is aggregated data from across the country. So until recently, I could make quite a strong impact of saying 4 out of 5 of our kids graduating grade 12 are not eligible to apply for engineering programs. Until recently, when post-secondary universities began to stop the requirement for grade 12 results. So in some provinces, it's no longer a prerequisite to get in because the participation rates at the senior high school level were quite low. So this is a challenge for Let's Talk Science. How many of you have heard of Let's Talk Science in the audience? Great. So we're about helping kids prepare for the future of work and citizenship demands. We believe very strongly it's through STEM. How do we help young people use science, technology, engineering, and math-based learning to keep them engaged in learning? It's not about creating all the PhDs or the engineers, because for us, it's about how to keep kids engaged in grade 12, help them recognize that the college pathways require more STEM, help them realize that more and more job opportunities require STEM. The blue talks about our 3 core competencies as an organization. We're really good at delivering programs. I'm not going to go into our programs today because we have quite a number of workshops here, and you can check out at our booth as well. I'm going to talk more about the research and advocacy role that we've been playing for the last couple of decades. And thirdly, a core competence that we actually started with was connecting the research community, the science community, with the education. And I'm really proud of all 3 of our competencies, but today I want to talk more about the research that we've been doing. So the programs that we do offer cover from junior kindergarten, actually early child development, up to the end of grade 12. And we've got something for teachers and for kids. So this is a brand family. You'll see through the program here at STAO, we're covering all of our programs, and at our booth, you'll actually be able to learn more about what we do. So I want to focus a bit more on understanding the environment. So you got some insight as to why what you are doing is so important on the national stage, and what we're trying to do as an organization to propel the profile and the importance of your work into even bigger audiences at the policy level. For the last 6 years or so, we've been partnered with Amgen Canada to produce a series of reports called the Spotlight on Science Learning Reports. How many of you, show of hands, have seen any of them or heard about them? Not too many. The website, you can get them off of our website at letstalkscience.ca, and I think it would be of quite a lot of interest to you. We began saying, if we're going to showcase how important K-12 science is for the country's future, we need to be talking about what we do in a way that resonates with policymakers. And in this country, jobs, economy, right? Typically, you go into these kinds of conversations and we just be focused on post-secondary or workforce transition. But we would go and say, we don't actually have kids engaged. We don't have more young people with the capacity to make important choices after grade 12. And the pipeline is not going to be there. So we began with a series of studies. I'm going to take you through some of the highlights. But the first one was taking a look at the big scale. What are the benchmarks that are really important for the country, and where does K-12 fit in? Then we took a look at the opportunity costs, the social and financial costs of dropping out. So in Ontario, like pretty much everywhere else around the country, kids can leave science, just engage after grade 10. Right? We talk about one more optional science credit for graduation. But did you know in some of the school boards that French is an appropriate replacement for science or technology credit as well? So there's some need to actually raise the profile and the importance of the program. So after the first 2 studies talked about the ecosystem, we did a study looking at what kids are thinking. That would be, I think, of considerable interest to educators. It's fascinating, and I'll show you some of the results. And the 4th one we did looks at what parents are thinking. So parents and teenagers. So they're all available on our website. I'll take you through a few highlights. But understanding the ecosystem and the environment led us to create Canada 2067, where we'll spend more of our time. So just to give you an idea, we talk an awful lot about international parameters. And this slide came from the Council of Canadian Academies. Again, we looked at it in some of our research. And we found that globally, Canadians are actually top of the charts in all of the international comparators with respect to our attitudes towards science and tech. So we're #1 on going to science centers, we appreciate science, we're positively disposed towards science. Capabilities of our kids are actually quite high. When this slide was done, we were at 10th, but over the last couple of years, and the last PISA results showed that our kids went up to 4th level. So kudos to everybody. The rankings went up. When we go to selection and post-secondary choice, we actually fall very quickly. So something is happening with respect to the positive predisposition that we have towards science and technology, to the desire to be engaged in a career on the long run. I'm going to unpack this a little bit more, but I do want to touch a little bit on the gender issue, because we are hearing an awful lot about girls in science lately, and it's a complicated issue. It's complex, and I think we're probably not unpacking it quite well enough. So I want to talk to you about what the PISA results said around the gender participation, which is really just a bit more the data from the slide I just passed over. So good for you. Like, look at these numbers of the proportion of kids who expect a science-based career or science-related career. Canada has gone up in the last several years. So from 2006 to 2015, we went up. And the average in Canada over the OECD averages is significantly higher. So our kids aspire, or they see themselves in these areas, and it's been getting better. More girls than boys aspire to science-based careers. So that's pretty interesting. If you unpack it a little bit more, though, the stereotypical responses is still there. So more boys are aspiring or see themselves in engineering and technology degrees, or programs or jobs. Girls a bit more towards the life sciences and health sciences, still with a 3-to-1 ratio. ICT, information communication technology jobs, is, you could say, 4 times more young men, boys see themselves in computer science related jobs. Or you could say not many at all see themselves in those kinds of digital jobs. So this is where the story gets more complicated, right? On average, if we say 2% of our kids actually see themselves in one of the fastest growing areas for work in the future, that's a problem. We need to tackle that for all kids. And then lastly, taking a look at the last column, none of our kids are actually seeing themselves necessarily in the technology-related jobs. We're seeing where science goes in the college areas. So I think we need to be very proud of the progress that we've been making, but realize that there's still more work to be done. This slide just highlights some of the language we've been using with kids. The green are the number of jobs that require science as a background. And this table really looks at top 10 jobs that have been aggregated by other organizations. So Time magazines and the popular culture press has actually taken a look at where the top 10 jobs, and we just color coded them. When kids see that green is science, blue is field traits with a STEM background, they see that so many of the jobs that are coming in the next decade or 2 actually require the STEM backgrounds. So why the disconnect? Why are we seeing so much opportunity and yet kids are still disengaging? There's been a lot of global research into the key factors, and they're listed here. I mean, it continues to be a perceived lack of relevance, especially at high school. Where does this go? Why is it going to be important to me? Despite the amazing work that we and other organizations have done over the years to try to get role models in front of kids, there's still this perception that science is a solitary job, right? It's really quite fascinating to see that. Lack of career understanding is big, and of course you're all don't have enough planning time, enough resources, enough support, enough opportunity to do inquiry-based STEM learning. And parents are a barrier in the sense that parents don't necessarily have the same level of understanding of what is happening and where the opportunities might be. And sometimes if their kid says, I'm not good at science or math, it's okay to disengage or when you talk to kids, they actually have very strong values proposition. They really want to make a useful contribution to society. So when we ask teenagers, what actually drives you? What is going to inspire you to make a career selection? This is what we get. 84% want to make a useful contribution. 79% want to help people. 75% want to be in positions that allow them to make decisions. And 70% want to solve problems. They're not making the connection with the STEM-based careers in the future. But this should make you really proud. This is a wonderful, wonderful feedback from the kids on what's driving them. It's about values. When we looked at parents to find out what did they think about it, we were actually pleasantly surprised to realize that parents have pretty good understanding about the future of work and the growing importance of science and technology and education for their kids' future. So parents were pulling back saying, I would be really proud if my child was in that area. I think it's more important than when I was a young person. And this is wonderful, but they're not talking to their kids about it. So we had about a quarter of the parents polled saying they don't talk to their kids about the future of work in this way. And they sure don't talk about the importance of the optional credits. So they think it's happening in school, and they think that guidance counselors are career counselors, and it might already be happening. So we need to actually work with the parents a bit more. So we want you to know that at Let's Talk Science, we don't think that you should be in this alone. And a lot of the work that we've done with our Spotlight on Science Learning reports has been call to actions for the rest of the community outside the formal education system to have a better understanding of what you do, what you're trying to do, and how we can help support you. So I'm not going to go through this icon, but it really looks at what is the role of industry, what parents do, what nonprofits do, what should the kids' responsibility as learners themselves be, post-secondary governments. And so much of our focus on the collective action required to support you was really a driver for the Canada 2067 initiative. So that brings us back to, should the narrative change? I think the narrative is changing. I think you need to understand how the narrative is changing so you can leverage it. So we can really put more of a spotlight on the importance of the work that you're doing at all levels, elementary and secondary, and actually marry it up to some of the key priorities that are happening across the country. So with that, I want to shift to talk to you about the Canada 2067 initiative, because there's some really great things that you can do to help us understand what you think should happen with STEM education, and there's opportunities to engage your kids now and over the next few months. This slide just calls it some of our key partners that have been hugely important for this initiative. So I'm going to show a video. Let's see if it's loud enough to go over these guys. But this should give you a context of what we're trying to do.
Today, the pace of life and learning is faster than ever, and it will only accelerate further over the decades to come. Our Canadian education systems are like the rest of the world, but they must continue to evolve. The future will favor bold, creative, curious, and innovative. As science, technology, engineering, and math propel lives forward in exciting new directions. Will require a wider range of skills than ever before. Our new vision for education in Canada will empower students. Local citizens and economic leaders is our goal. But to get there, we need to think ahead. And Canada 2067 will make it happen. From engaging and collaborating with educators, business and government leaders, community groups, parents, and youth, we're events that implement a learning framework designed to inspire the innovator, problem solver, and discoverer in us all. Together, we'll make sure Canadian students have the skill sets they need to face the future with confidence. Whatever tomorrow holds, they'll be ready. Canada 2067 is the science of a successful tomorrow. Join us on the journey.
Many of you have heard about Canada 2067. Oh, that's good. I'm thrilled. So these are the different components. I'm going to spend just a little bit of time walking through the components, and then we're going to do a little bit of a pair share so I can take you through some of the exercises that we have for the kids and give you a taste for what we're hoping we can get your help with. So the first was thinking more about what we had learned about the ecosystem across the country, thinking about what it takes to drive systems change. You know, tackling systems change in education has got to be one of the toughest things to even be thinking about because of the federal, provincial, jurisdictional issues to begin with around who owns education. And then as you think about it within the provincial level, what is the role of the boards? What is the role of the school and the leadership of the school? And then what is the role of the teacher and how much autonomy a teacher has within a classroom? So if you're looking to trying to evolve change and support change, it really, you need to think about top down, you need to think about bottom up. So we tackled this idea by taking a step back to say, we know that countries around the world are talking about this at at national levels and at international levels in ways that Canada is not. So what can we learn by the other countries? And we began with doing almost a year of research looking at global policy initiatives from other countries that are talking about STEM. And we took a look at areas for consensus. So we'll actually have a background paper that will be available pretty soon, and it was fascinating because we were able to find these areas of consensus. And under A, we've shown a diagram of the different pillars critically important for systems change. We tried to use really accessible language as we try to bring in multiple stakeholders to understand education. We tried hard to not go to pedagogical jargon when we do this, and so I don't want you to think that we've been overly simplistic, but what we've been trying to do is think about what will parents understand, what will industry leaders understand, what will politicians without an education or science background understand. And so we boiled it down to these different pillars. How we teach, how we learn, what we learn, who's involved, meaning outside of the classroom environment, community partners, where education leads, and then there's a series of cross-cutting issues, gender issues, cultural issues, socioeconomic issues that cut across all of them. So under each of these different areas, we've been looking for best practices, we've been looking for research as to what other countries are doing. We're going to be bold enough to bring back measurable recommendations. This is where we need help. So we've actually been socializing this and pushing it out through online, the Canada2067.ca website. There's survey tools in there to actually get your perspectives to feed into this. We have youth conversation guides, and this is what we're going to focus a little bit more on because we want to know what kids are thinking. So on both the Canada 2067 website and our Curiosity website, we've got a whole suite of resources that you can use with your students to find out what they think. You can send us the feedback and we're aggregating all of it to ultimately come up with a common consensus building documentation around this learning framework. We also heard from the regions that just doing these conversation guides wasn't enough. So we're on we have a roadshow going across the country for regional summits that are hearing from grade 9 and 10 students. I'll tell you a bit more about that in just a moment. There was so much interest across the country about feeding into this idea of what do we do for STEM education in the future, that the Global Shapers Network, which is a group from the Economic Forum, the World Economic Forum, they hosted millennial roundtables across the country. There was like 12 to 15 roundtables to hear what the 20 to 30 something was thinking about their recent experience in school and how could they feed into it. And finally, the National Leadership Conference that's coming to Toronto on December 5th and 6th. And I know a few teachers from STAO are going to be there. So just to unpack them a little bit more fully, the Regional Youth Summit, mark your calendars next week, November 15th. We will be in Toronto. There's no more space for students, but it's live streamed. So I do encourage you to participate through the live stream, and subsequently we'll have the videos as well. The idea here was to get the voice of students as to the future of education, and we wanted to unlock their thinking. So by starting with a series of inspirational talks, which are the live stream component, we can get them engaged and excited about the future of opportunity and the diversity. These are pictures from the Vancouver Summit that we did about 2 weeks ago. And here's the pictures of the folks that we're going to have in Toronto. So the morning, we have wonderful speakers. You can see we have an astronaut, Jeremy Hansen is going to be there. We have Kona Williams, who's Canada's first Indigenous forensic pathologist, who will be with us. We thought until just recently, Mona Niemers, the first, was the chief science advisor. She's actually now going to have to shift to a different summit, unfortunately. But the way the summits are going in the morning, we'll be live streaming these speakers, and then the kids will be going into a consultation phase. You know how hard it is to say, what would you do differently? Right? If somebody says, what would you do differently in education? It might take a little bit of time. So imagine if you're 13, 14 years old, you haven't really experienced anything different. When we were focus grouping this, trying to think about how do we get youth voice here, so we decided that we would give them the context of designing the first school in Mars. Kids are divided into small groups, and we work with them to create what the curriculum look like. How would you design the facilities? How would you use technology to actually populate the very first school? How would you build your support team? So who besides the teacher needs to be in your court in order to have a good learning experience? How do you do report cards and assessment? How would you set the system up? So it's been a really interesting opportunity to hear what the kids are thinking, and not surprisingly, what they're coming out at the end of the day are amazing recommendations that can be implemented here on Earth right away. It doesn't have to be on Mars. The tools that we've been building to do that will be available online soon. We wanted to make sure that they worked well, so we did them in Vancouver. We've made some changes. We're going to make them available in French as well. And in the coming weeks, they'll actually be available online, so you could do it with your students. And you could do it in multiple parts and look at the different. I want to do a call out to George Brown College and Groundswell for working with us on this. It's a highly innovative consultation process, and it's really quite wonderful to see how serious the kids are taking this and having their voices heard. So that will be available. The National Leadership Conference, so you can also participate in, and we will be streaming it. We've got amazing speakers, very provocative panels, again, looking at all of those different issues that I presented earlier with the next. So this slide gives you an idea of the different areas and ways you can get involved before I actually put you to work. So follow Canada 2067 through Facebook and through Twitter. We really do want you to share your input through the website, through the choice book. Your survey results will go into the final documentation. Share it through your networks. Get your kids involved through the conversation guides and share your highlights. Success stories. Through the Canada 2067 Hub, we're finding that there are amazing things happening right across the country in classrooms that don't get showcased. You have an opportunity to share your practice, to share some cool things that are going on in your school. With that, short stories, we'll promote it. We'll get the word out for you. Or you can share an opinion piece. What do you think should change in any of these different areas? And in fact, I saw that we've got one coming in this morning, which is terrific. And last but not least, join the live streams. Get your kids involved. So I want to take you through a little bit of one of the youth toolkits, just to give you a taste for what's there. These have largely been designed for, say, the grade 8 to 11 audience, but they can be used, we'd say, with as young as grade 5s, maybe even grade 4s comfortably. The survey is also electronic, so you would be facilitating the conversation or having a youth leader within your classroom or your school facilitate the conversation without you there. It's working really well, and the guides are set up to help the facilitation happen. Then you can just submit the feedback, and it all gets collated, all anonymous, of course, so we can share that. So the first one I want to talk about is around STEM in everyday life. And the theme here is how do you fit learning into your life, if you're a teenager? So I'd like you to work, and you're at one person, you maybe want to change tables, but here's one of the questions that we have. I want to give you a minute. I will call in some respondents in a moment, but talk about this question for a second. This is what the kids will do. What's been the most useful STEM topic or concept that you've learned so far that you could use in your everyday life? Why has it been useful, and how does it relate to your life? Maybe 2 minutes. And conferences are for networking, so you should be sitting in groups and meetings. one more minute and we'll give somebody the opportunity to volunteer to share. All right, to put you back together, who wants to share most useful STEM topic or concept? Anyone? Yeah. Measurement. Very good. I won't ask you why measurement's been useful in your life, but that's good. Good answer. Anyone else? Most useful topic?
Related geometry. Home renovations, things like that.
Geometry for home renovations. Very good. All right. So you get the idea. The students aren't necessarily using home renovations as their answers, but they actually are getting pretty thoughtful. So, question 2, is there anything you've learned so far in STEM-related subjects that you wish you could learn more about in school? I just want to yell out.
Basic math.
Basic math. Anything else? Coding. Technology, computer skills. Yeah. Anything else? Microbiology, yeah. Especially during flu season. Yeah, that's good. So why do you think that it wasn't taught, or why isn't more of it taught today? There's no right answers, right? Time, curriculum. There's a lack of resources. So I didn't hear that? Oh, cost. Yeah, very good. So you get the idea that on each of these different areas, we're looking at the responsibility of the learner. In one of them, we're looking at how to make STEM more relevant in others and everyday life. So having the students actually participate in one class time in tackling some of these topics has actually been hugely valuable, not only for us, but to help kids actually see the relevance and the importance of what they are learning in school for their future. So with respect to Canada 2067, the consultation that's online is deeper, even deeper than the perspective that we're bringing for the students. So we really do ask for your participation. And if you can go on before the holiday season would be great, because we're trying to coordinate all of the responses. We've also learned a lot about social media, and over the last couple of months, we began pulling that survey tool apart. We've had several thousand people complete the full survey tool. We began pulling the survey tool apart and feeding out sections of it. And we've had over 165,000 completes of the sections. So there's a wonderful opportunity to actually look for areas of consensus in the country and bring that together with more of a whole vision. So with respect to the questionnaire, we're not going to spend time unpacking this, but it starts out with things like, think about the current primary and secondary education systems across Canada. How well do you think they equip students with the skills they need to meet the challenges of a more technological, science-based world? And it goes through the gamut. There's lots of open-end opportunities then to actually talk about it. What would you do? How would you add to the system? And we're actually collating all of that. So please do get involved. I'm not going to talk to this group about why it's so important, but one of the rationales for trying to do something at a national level is to leverage resources and to leverage a national perspective to support you better. So the more that we can get people aligned with the importance of what's happening in the classroom and the support system that can exist and should exist and the resources be more available, the better we're going to be able to leverage what you're doing. So the last thing I want to touch on is a few other connections that I think as educators you need to know are happening. First of all, under Curious City, we've actually pulled together all of the components that you as educators can benefit from with the Canada 2067 experience. If you have questions about Curious City, the lead is right here. Stephen Lippa, stand up, so you can talk with him afterwards. Thank you. We've aggregated teaching resources, we've aggregated all the career profiles from the speakers there. We've put some career education resources for you to use there as well. We've linked to the toolkits. We will link to the Develop a School on Bars, and all the conversation guides are there as well. And you can access the live streams as well. So if you go to Curiosity, you can get everything that the educator will need to participate in Canada 2067. We've got things with by Chris Hadfield as well, who's gotten engaged and supportive of this. How many of you have heard of Murdoch Mysteries? So we've got Yannick Beeson is on there as well. He's done some work with us on this too. And that brings us over to Emerald Code. I'm going to show you a video in just a moment. But the company that produces Murdoch Mysteries, Houdini and Doyle and The Listener and others, actually is deeply committed to supporting education, deeply committed to good science and good technology. When we talked to them about Canada 2067, they wanted to get involved as an entertainment culture partner. And they created this wonderful new web series called Emerald Code. I'm going to show you the trailer in just a moment. It's designed to get girls interested in STEM and in coding and computational thinking. And there's two components. One is a scripted series, 3 minutes. You can use them in class, you can tell the kids about it. And another is a mini documentary series, also pretty short pieces, also all available for Curiosity, to showcase real kids in STEM across the country. I'm going to show you a trailer on that in just a moment. And then the last one is the work of ICTC, which is Information and Communications Technology Council. You heard coding, you heard computational thinking. ICTC has produced an online resource called #ICT4All, and it's a database of resources that are available to you and programs, free programs that are available to come into the classroom that will support digital skill development. So through the ICTC website, you can get the ICT4All database. We're trying to keep it current. If you know of other organizations that are doing things, we've got 200 listings in there right now for right across the country. Free online resources for you, groups that will come into the classroom and do digital programming with you as well. And then with Emerald Code, to get close to the end, this is the trailer of the scripted series. Half of them are now live, and you might want to promote them to kids that you think would be interested. Oops, let me just see if I can put this to play.
Guys, is anyone on? Oh, some of us are unreal. Anyone on? I'm at 11 on my way. The main one is for someone who is submission to line up right now. 7. Oh, Lucas, I love here. Lily's going to my party because I was uploading my code. Who does that? Jackson, Jackson, 41 here from the Walters. I told student council this would be perfect. Project Candy Grammy. Everyone on the ground. 3, 2. I can't believe all this. No one jumped your gun, but we're getting a big one for you. Uh-oh, guys. No! What would you do? Can I just say again, we have no time and no project. I can't just start these screwed up again. Okay, let's do it. More than a hashtag. This is a movement. That's great. I couldn't do this without you.
So through this platform, Let's Talk Science has been consulting with the company to make sure that it works within the curriculum, that it's covering some of the topics in really short bites that you might want to be using as an introduction or as a conclusion. Just get the kids interested in this. It's been really interesting working with a company like that and thinking about what is the role of an external stakeholder to support, thinking in their minds, how could they support what you're doing in a classroom and still be able to have this kind of full production available. So with that, I want to have some time for questions. I really do appreciate you being here. I think Canada 2067 is the movement as opposed to the coding as the chaps Brainroom is doing. It's really important for teachers to be part of this. The momentum is building with this project. It's actually coming together in a way that is even better than I had anticipated when we began down this path about a year and a half ago. It's really important that teachers are at the table as we take this national conversation forward. So I invite you to get involved. I thank you for being here at this session today, and I'd be happy to have some Q&A. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
I am Matt from Casualty. You presented this wonderful evidence-based approach to policies that learning. What we know that policies are partially shaped by evidence. How are you going to contend with the other
It's a really good question because you're absolutely right. The evidence is part of the equation, but it's not all of it. So some of the thinking behind the approach we took was based on a lot of relationships that we've built over the years. So we've worked with provincial governments, we've worked with the federal government, we've worked with the Business Council of Canada, we've worked with many of the different stakeholder groups. And before we got started, did a lot of socializing to say within all of those different stakeholder groups, what is your issue? What is your thought? And how would you get involved if we could actually convene a conversation that had multiple stakeholders? So we went into it with a pretty clear idea of the verticals. So I like to call them the verticals. Like, what is industry thinking about? Industry is really thinking about where their talent is coming from in the future, right? What are teachers? We're working with the Canadian Teachers Federation. What are teachers thinking about? What are the concerns? What are the challenges with teachers? What are parents thinking about? And we kind of went through all of those different areas. And that's why we decided that we would try to stay not in the weeds and not so high in the clouds that nobody could really do anything. But we wanted that middle ground. And we began to say there's consensus everywhere around the world on these areas. So it's probably safe that we can hold conversations about those areas. And then we just began to enable. We began to have positive conversations. There's a huge desire in this country to help ensure our kids are positioned for success. There's only 5 million school-age kids in this country. I want to use the stat that's 20% fewer than in the state of California. So when you put it on that scale and you start saying to leaders, we only have 5 million kids in this country. And we have to figure out how do you build the citizens of the future and how do you build kids that can do well in leading the workforce of the future. And yet just in the last 5 years, coding, computational thinking, the growth of digital jobs has skyrocketed. So how on earth are you expected to be prepared for it? So it's been keeping the eye on the kids, keeping the eye on how do we make sure we get to all of them, and recognizing that everybody has a really valid point and very valid perspective on the issue, and try to be that translator and bringing them together. And that has been key. That has been key.
Just wondering, in all of your years of running this organization, what have you found to be the most effective way of letting educators know that you're this, resources? I really remember how I came across you, but it's been email or just spam thing. I'm just curious, because I don't think any of my colleagues know about the organization and resources that you have, what tools or what methods you have.
It tells me that we haven't found the most effective way. It is the most difficult challenge that we face, because as an organization, you don't want to be spending all your money on marketing. Right? We want to be developing programs and getting programs and resources into your hands. So it is a challenge. We have really been blessed by teachers who help spread the word for us through social, through venues like this. We're doing quite a number of workshops at the STAO conference. We have an exhibit space. We do that right across the country. We try really hard. Our focus as an organization is it's you, right? Probably 70% of our effort at Let's Talk Science is focused within the formal education system, from early childhood to grade 12. So we work with you, and as word gets out, then we're continuing to grow, but it is hard. So please tell your friends about our free resources, right? Our work is free thanks to the funding that we get from different levels of government, industries, foundations, and individuals as well. Well, with that, I'll officially close this, and again, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been great.
I want to thank Bonnie so much for coming to share this really exciting initiative from Let's Talk Science. And I do encourage each one of you to go to their website, get involved, get your students involved. It really is exciting, especially I love the national vision because we can support each other. And I don't know if you noticed, but Bonnie used the word ecosystem several times. Raise your hand if you heard her say ecosystem today. I love that. Because I think that's the key, that we are building an ecosystem, interrelated, interdependent on all science educators across the country. And Let's Talk Science is definitely in the front and forerunner helping us to do that. So thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for coming. Have a wonderful day.
All right, that's it for our first live stream from STAO 2017. Stay tuned for more live streams at our YouTube channel or on our Twitter page. Thanks.